It was a cold, overcast October morning in a small Pennsylvania town. The wind hissed between the brick buildings, scattering crisp amber leaves across the damp sidewalks. At precisely 7:42 a.m., a young woman named Emily Hart darted out of her apartment complex, coffee in hand, bag slung over one shoulder, and her other hand adjusting the fraying strap of her backpack. She was late, again. Her 8 a.m. American literature class was across campus, and the bus, her lifeline, had left 3 minutes early. As she sprinted the final stretch past a shuttered bakery and an old bookstore with a for lease sign in the window, her mind raced with more than just fear of tardiness. Emily was 19, a second-year journalism student at a prestigious but expensive private college. Her entire life she'd been told that hard work pays off, that education is the way out, that if she kept her head down and gave it everything, she'd build a better life than the one she came from. And for a while she believed it. She had the grades, the ambition, the fire. But that morning, as she slipped into the back of her lecture hall, cheeks flushed and lungs burning, her faith in that promise was wearing thin. Over the past year, the scaffolding that held up Emily's world had begun to buckle. One of her scholarships, awarded through a local foundation, had expired due to fine print no one warned her about. Her financial aid appeal had been denied, and while her professors praised her talent and dedication, no amount of encouragement could pay the remaining $14,872 she owed in tuition. She worked two part-time jobs, one at a 24-hour diner near campus and another cleaning offices at night. Sleep was a luxury. Free time didn't exist. And still, it wasn't enough. Rent was always late. Groceries came from the dollar store. And now her college had placed a financial hold on her account. No registration, no transcripts, no graduation. Emily had received the email the night before. Final notice. Your current outstanding balance must be paid in full by November 1st to avoid withdrawal. She read it 5 times. Her chest tightened. Her fingers trembled as she gripped her phone. But she didn't cry. She just sat there in the dim glow of her desk lamp, the buzzing fridge humming in the background, and wondered for the first time if maybe her best just wasn't good enough. Was this the end? The next morning, Emily sat alone in the library's quietest corner, laptop open but untouched. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, motionless. She had come here to study, to finish a research paper on media bias in 21st century journalism. But her mind couldn't stay still long enough to form a sentence. Instead, she found herself scrolling through scholarship websites, most of them either expired or unavailable to second-year students. She clicked through forum posts, blog articles, anything, hoping for a miracle, a hidden grant, something overlooked. But the numbers didn't lie. Even with 2 jobs and some modest student loans, there was a gap. A wide, uncrossable chasm between her dreams and her reality. A chasm worth $14,872. She closed her laptop and pressed her forehead to the cool table. Then, as if guided by instinct more than logic, she opened her email. It was mostly junk, retail ads, job shift confirmations, a note from her professor reminding her to submit a draft. But one subject line caught her eye. Nominate a student in need. Swift Foundation bursary. She blinked. Wait, Swift Foundation? She clicked. The form was simple. Just a few questions. Student name, field of study, school name, and a space at the bottom that read, "Tell us why this student deserves support. Tell us their story." Emily hesitated. Was this real? The fine print revealed little, only that it was a confidential initiative sponsored by a high-profile donor interested in anonymously supporting students in financial crisis. The form could be filled out by anyone, a friend, a professor, even the student themselves. She glanced around the room, half expecting someone to tap her on the shoulder and say it was a joke. But no one did. After 10 minutes of just staring at the screen, Emily began typing. She wrote about her mother who worked the graveyard shift at the hospital and still came home in time to make her coffee every morning. She wrote about her father, who left when she was 7 and never looked back. She wrote about the long nights, the double shifts, the skipped meals, the books borrowed instead of bought. She wrote about the fear, the fear that she might have to give it all up. She didn't embellish. She didn't dramatize. She just told the truth. And then she hit submit. She didn't tell anyone. Not her mom, not her roommate, not even her closest friend. She didn't want to hope, because hope was dangerous. Days passed. Then a week. Emily tried to push the bursary form from her mind. She buried herself in coursework, in shifts that ended past midnight, in cheap instant noodles and scribbled to-do lists. But as November crept closer, so did the deadline. Each morning, she checked her email before getting out of bed, half dreading, half hoping. Still nothing. Then on a Thursday afternoon, her phone buzzed while she was taking inventory at the diner. It was an email from the college's financial office. Subject: important update regarding your student account. Her heart dropped. Her hands trembled as she tapped it open, bracing for the final blow. But the message was short. Dear Emily Hart, we are pleased to inform you that your current tuition balance has been fully paid through a private donor contribution. Effective immediately, the financial hold on your account has been lifted. Please contact the registrar's office to proceed with spring semester registration. Warm regards, Office of Financial Services. Emily read it once, then again, and again. Paid? Fully? She stood frozen in the storeroom, surrounded by cans of soup and boxes of napkins, tears pooling in her eyes. She pressed a hand over her mouth to stifle the sob that rose from her chest. Who? How? She dashed outside, heart pounding, dialing her mom, but the words wouldn't come. Just laughter, then tears, then silence. That night in bed, she refreshed the Swift Foundation page. It had changed. Now it read, "Thank you for your submissions. This year's bursaries have been awarded. Stay tuned for our next round." No names, no announcements, just silence. But Emily didn't need a name. Not really, because a few days later, her roommate showed her a post on Twitter, a blurry photo, a girl from another university. Same story, same tuition hold, same mysterious payment. And at the bottom of the thread, someone had written, "I heard it's Taylor Swift, quietly paying off student debt. No press, no spotlight, just kindness." Emily stared at the screen, stunned. Taylor Swift. She remembered the stories. How Swift had quietly donated to food banks during the pandemic, helped fans pay rent, sent handwritten notes to students struggling with loans. She was always doing things like this, always quietly, always with compassion. Emily sat in the dark, blanket wrapped around her, phone still glowing in her hand. She didn't need confirmation. She didn't need proof. Because in that moment, as the weight of weeks and months lifted from her shoulders, she felt it. She was seen. Something had shifted. Emily felt it the next morning as she walked through campus, head high, shoulders back, the chill October air no longer cutting quite as deep. The weight she had carried for so long had lessened. Her account was clear, yes, but it was more than that. She felt seen, acknowledged, and for the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine the future again. Instead of heading straight to class, Emily went to the library, not to study, to write. She opened her laptop, hands trembling slightly, not from fear but purpose. She created a new document and titled it, "Invisible Hands, The Quiet Power of Kindness." It wasn't a formal assignment. It wasn't for a grade or publication. It was for her, a story she needed to tell. Without naming herself or revealing any private details, Emily wrote about what it meant to be on the edge, to feel like the world was about to push you off, and then to be caught by someone you'd never met. She wrote about dignity, about resilience, about how quiet acts of generosity can echo louder than fame ever could. She didn't mention the Swift Foundation by name. She didn't need to. She simply wrote, "Sometimes the loudest voices aren't the ones that shout. They're the ones that whisper, 'I see you,' when the world turns away." When she was done, she submitted the piece to the campus newspaper on a whim. She didn't expect them to run it, but they did, and something happened. Professors stopped her in the hallway to talk about it. Classmates she barely knew sent her emails. One girl even approached her in the dining hall, eyes glossy, saying, "I read your piece. I thought I was alone." Emily realized then, her story, however quietly told, was not just hers anymore. It belonged to anyone who had ever doubted their worth, anyone who had stood on the edge, praying for a reason to keep going. And she had more to say. That weekend, Emily took the long way home from work. She walked past the old bookstore again, the one with the "For Lease" sign still taped in the window, and paused in front of it. The display was dusty, the lettering on the sign faded, but for some reason, it felt different now, like something unfinished, like possibility. She stood there for a few moments, coffee cup warm between her fingers, before turning and heading back to her apartment. Her feet were sore, her body tired, but her mind was racing. That night, she opened a blank page in her notebook and wrote 3 words at the top: the Swift effect. It was an idea she couldn't shake, not just about Taylor Swift, not even about celebrity, but about what happens when someone uses their platform not to speak louder, but to lift someone else's voice. Emily began researching. Late into the night, she read article after article about anonymous donations, kindness chains, viral generosity. She compiled stories of students whose tuition had mysteriously vanished, fans who'd received life-changing gifts in the mail, single parents who found rent paid without ever asking. There was a pattern, a movement, a quiet revolution, and no one was really writing about it. That's when the pitch formed in her mind. An in-depth feature article for a major publication, not from the lens of celebrity gossip, but from the heart of journalism, a story about silent kindness in a loud world. It was ambitious, probably too ambitious. But ambition had brought her this far. And maybe, just maybe, this was what she was meant to do. To tell the stories that mattered, to chase the truth, even when it whispered. To write, not just to inform, but to remind people that compassion still existed, even when you couldn't see it. And this time, she wouldn't wait for permission. By Monday morning, Emily had drafted her pitch. She read it over a dozen times before sending it to the editor of a national digital magazine known for spotlighting underreported stories. It was a long shot, she knew that. She had no professional bylines, no agent, no connections. Just a Word document, raw determination, and the quiet fire that had carried her through so much already. The subject line read, "Feature idea, the Swift effect, how silent kindness is reshaping lives." She hit send at 6:14 a.m. and immediately regretted it, but the reply came faster than she ever imagined. By that afternoon, her phone buzzed with an email that simply read, "Hi, Emily. This is beautiful. I don't know how you found us, but I'm glad you did. Let's talk." Her heart leapt. She stared at the screen, stunned, then reread the message just to make sure it was real. For the first time, someone in the industry had responded, not with polite rejection or silence, but with possibility. The next few days blurred into a mix of nervous energy and furious writing. She skipped social events, turned down extra shifts, and spent every spare hour refining her article. She gathered more stories, followed leads, spoke to other students who had experienced similar anonymous miracles. Thanksgiving came and went with quiet simplicity. Emily spent the break at home with her mom, helping cook a small meal, sharing laughter over instant mashed potatoes, and watching old movies under mismatched blankets. There were no grand celebrations, just warmth, gratitude, and peace. But something had changed. Her mom noticed it first. The way Emily carried herself, the way she spoke about the future, not with hesitation, but with purpose. "You seem lighter," her mom said one night, handing her a cup of tea. "Like something opened up inside you." Emily smiled, holding the warm mug between her palms. Maybe something did. Back at school, as finals approached, the pressure returned, but it didn't crush her this time, because now she had something to hold on to, a path, a voice, a direction. And then, one afternoon in December, as snow flurried gently outside the library windows, Emily received a package. No sender name, no return address, just her name, typed neatly on a white label. Inside was a simple leather journal. Embossed on the cover were the words, "For the ones who write what matters." No note, no explanation. Just that. Emily ran her fingers over the lettering, stunned. She knew it might not be from who she thought. It could have been a friend, a professor, even a reader. But deep down, she had that same quiet feeling again, that someone, somewhere was reminding her to keep going. She opened the first page, blank, untouched, waiting. She smiled, because for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the blank page. It didn't feel like a void anymore. It felt like a beginning. The year ended the way so many stories do, not with fireworks or fanfare, but with quiet resolve. Emily submitted her final exams, packed her bag, and caught the last campus shuttle home. Snow blanketed the sidewalks, and the town seemed to exhale with her. Everything slowed. On New Year's Eve, while others gathered for parties and countdowns, she stayed home, curled on the couch with her journal in her lap and a pen in her hand. She didn't write resolutions. She wrote intentions. Tell stories that make people feel less alone. Listen more than I speak. Be the kind of person who gives quietly. Never underestimate the power of one unseen act. Then she turned to the next page and began her first official pitch for a new article series. The working title, The Kindness Chain, Stories You'll Never See in Headlines. And she knew she wouldn't stop there. There were thousands of Emilys out there, people standing at the edge wondering if anyone saw them. Now she had the platform and the calling to remind them they weren't invisible. Across town, in an apartment Emily would never see, a woman scrolled through articles on her phone. Her face was familiar to millions, though no one would have guessed she was the reader behind the screen. She smiled as she read the final line of Emily's published piece, then locked her phone, tucked her feet beneath a blanket, and whispered to no one in particular, "That's why we do it. No hashtags, no headlines, no credit needed. Just kindness, passed forward. One silent gift at a time."